Right. Everything's got to be fast today. Why? Because Shabbos is coming. And these days are very short in the winter. And I got to go pick up my son, who's going to be finishing Little League practice pretty soon, or rather high school baseball practice. So it's going to be a short show. Everything's got to move fast. Fast, fast, fast. First of all, please comment. Where are you tuning in from? Remember, when you comment, when you say hello, when you say good Shabbos, anything you do like that, signals to Facebook, we're doing something of value. More people are going to see the show. More people are going to learn Torah. And you're a good partner in our effort to share Torah, light, and wisdom with the world. So thank you, Adrian Smith, for saying good Sabbath. Good for you. Hit that like and love button, my friends. This is AT Daily Express. I got to keep it moving because I don't want to keep my son waiting when I pick him up from practice. Thank you, Peter Descal. Shabbat Shalom. James Roth in the house, sending love to Indianapolis. Okay, we are in chapter 3. We are on Daf 21 of the first volume of the Talmud, Tractate Berachos. Now we're going to encounter a whole... This was not the good day to encounter an AT Daily Express and have to go fast because there's so much in this page. It's a long and complicated page. But this is not a Daf Yomi Shir. I don't cover everything that's included in each page, just some crucial highlights, right? Just some crucial highlights. So here in this Daf, we encounter a Mishnah which says that somebody, a man, who has had a seminal emission, he's going to be impure, he's going to be tameh until he immerses, and he therefore may not recite the Shema, but rather he contemplates the Shema and he omits the blessings before and after. And if he eats food, he says the blessing after the food, but not before. So we have to break this down a little bit. First of all, this law has changed, okay? So a lot of the rules that have to do with ritual impurity, to somebody who is tameh, means impure. When he becomes pure, because he immerses and waits till nightfall, so then he's tahor, he's pure. But these laws are largely related to being in a state of purity that allows you to bring a sacrifice to the holy temple and to enter the courtyard of the temple. We no longer have the temple. And so many of these laws ended up being changed. They ended up being changed. So this particular law was introduced by Ezra the scribe at the beginning of the Second Temple period, but our sages later retracted the law. And so a man who experiences a seminal emission, even though he does not then later go immerse himself in the waters of a mikveh, it doesn't matter. He may still engage in Shema, in Torah study, and in prayer. A man does not have to immerse in the mikveh and become pure again after seminal emission before doing those things. There are people in certain groups, certain traditions, have the custom for a man to immerse in the mikveh every day. Just in case the temple is rebuilt today, so he'll be ready, he'll be in a state of purity. But that is not universally accepted at all. Some guys have the tradition to immerse before Shabbat. Men are not commanded. There is no obligation for a man to immerse in mikveh unless he's converting to Judaism. There he has a commandment. Women are commanded to immerse in the mikveh once a month when they come out of their time when the couple is not permitted to each other. So the requirements these days for a women's mikveh are different than a men's mikveh because it is not obligatory for the men to immerse in the mikveh. Nevertheless, from this law, we establish a principle that's kind of interesting because in the time of Ezra, for these guys who were not allowed to recite the Shema because they were still in a state of ritual impurity, it said that they should not recite the Shema, but they could contemplate the Shema. And then there's a big argument about the sages. Well, wait a minute. If he's fulfilling his obligation by contemplating the Shema, but he's not allowed to say the Shema, and they've drawn this distinction, so then are we saying that contemplation is equivalent to speaking? Can one fulfill his obligation by contemplating when for some reason he's going to do that rather than speak? And ultimately the answer is no. We draw a distinction between thinking and speaking. Things which we think are thought, and things which we speak are spoken, and they're different, right? When does this come up? So, for example, we have the silent Amidah. Are we thinking it? Answer, we're saying it silently, but we want our lips moving, right? Likewise, when we say the grace after meals, often we start it together. Some people will sing the whole thing. A lot of people will sort of say what the beginning of it together with the people they're with, and then they'll go quiet. But you can't go so quiet that you're not actually saying it. For the Shema, you have to even be able to hear yourself saying it. For the Amidah, your lips have to just be moving even if you don't hear it. But that's not the same as contemplating it. That's not the same as contemplating it. Then we had an interesting discussion on this page. When we read the Torah aloud in synagogue on Saturday, the person who is called up to have the aliyah, right? So somebody gets the benefit, the privilege, the honor. It's actually an honor of making the blessing before a piece of Torah is read and then a blessing after, right? The blessing before Torah reading is a Torah commandment. It comes from the line that you shall ascribe glory to the Lord when you call out his name. And from this we derive that we say a blessing before Torah reading. The blessing after Torah reading might be derived from making a comparison with eating. When we eat, we'll say a blessing before, and then we say the grace after the meal. The grace after the meal is commanded in the Torah. You shall bless the Lord when you have eaten and you're satisfied. The blessing before eating, not in the Torah. We derive it from saying a blessing before food. So these two things go together, Torah study and eating. For Torah study, the Torah commands us to say a blessing first, doesn't say what we do afterward. For eating, the Torah says we say a blessing after eating. It doesn't tell us what to do before. The rabbis filled in that we also say a blessing before eating, and we also say a blessing after reading the Torah. We might link these two things together and say, just as we do it here, we do it there, and just as we do it there, we do it here. But then the rabbis reject that as the reasoning for why. Because you might think to say, well, for eating, which is really important and sustains our lives, if we say a blessing afterwards, then just like Torah study, we're also going to say that blessing afterwards. And for Torah study, Torah reading, where we say the blessing before, it's so holy, it's such a matter of holiness. But then, in eating, which is similar, but somehow less holy, we should also add that blessing before. But the logic of these extensions that we do, we because we do it here, we're therefore going to do it there, falls apart because both of these activities, Torah reading publicly and in eating, each have a way in which they do more for a person than the other and are more holy for the other. And you can't establish that logical inference. And so we do that. We do have a blessing before eating and grace after eating. We do have a blessing before public Torah reading and a blessing after. But we don't derive those practices from the other according to the simple logical chain that was suggested by Rabbi Yochanan. This is to teach that we cannot just say, well, in that matter of holiness, we did such and such. It makes sense to me logically that I'm going to do it like this, and so I'm going to add that blessing. Our sages spent hundreds of years figuring out where we do, how we do, which blessings are said, which ones are not said, and we can't add our own just from logic because the logic is so subtle and nuanced and difficult to arrive at. So here we've encountered a practice that did become the normative practice. It is what people do around the world, but we're going to have to look elsewhere to find the logical proof of how we arrived at those practices. And so we'll encounter that further down the line in our Talmud study. Also on this page, I'm going to end with this in our AT Daily Express. I'm moving really fast because I don't want to have my son waiting when I go to pick him up from baseball practice. But we look at what we do when we arrive in synagogue and we're late. And so people are already doing the prayer. Right? When the sages say prayer or the prayer, they mean something specific. They mean the Shemona Esrei or the standing prayer, two names for the same thing. It's the centerpiece of the morning, afternoon, and evening prayer service. First, morning and afternoon, it is said silently, and then it is repeated, led by the prayer leader, and everyone answers Amen. And the main difference between the one spoken aloud and the one done silently is that when the prayer leader leads, he adds this prayer called the Kedusha, the prayer of holiness. When we all answer him like the angels, we imitate the angels and we say, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. And that is a prayer that we can only say with 10 or more publicly. Matters of holiness. The same with the Kaddish. We only say that out loud with 10 or more, a prayer quorum, also called a minyan. So if you arrive late and they're already doing the silent Amidah, do you start? Answer, you have to kind of know what's going on with this service and what time they started, and you have to be able to gauge, can I finish the silent recitation before they reach the Kedusha? If I cannot finish the silent Amidah before they reach the Kedusha, then I don't begin the silent Amidah. Why? Because when we reach the Kedusha, I want to be able to answer along with the kahal, the congregation. And I cannot interrupt my own silent prayer in order to answer with them. So if I can't finish before they're going to do that, so I don't do my silent prayer, I wait, I answer the Kedusha like them, and then I do my prayer. And there's some other wrinkles to that as well. If you've arrived even after the Kedusha, can you start? Answer as if you can reach before they give the prayer of thanksgiving. This stuff gets really technical. And if you're observant enough that you pray regularly on a daily basis and you want to know these rules, you need to look them up carefully and not get it from me in an AT Daily Express. But the bottom line is you want to be part of the communal prayer in the congregation. You don't want to interrupt your silent prayer. You don't want to start your silent prayer if it's going to be interrupted. Okay, my pals. This was way fast, and I apologize for that, but life sometimes gets in the way. Shabbat is coming. I wish you the sweetest of good Shabboses. May you enjoy health and joy and prosperity. May you enjoy a Sabbath peace that descends on you and your family this evening. You are allowed, you can't write during Shabbat, but you can study Torah. So I plan to, study tomorrow's page carefully, and God willing, do our AT Daily Talmud study for page 22 tomorrow night after Shabbat ends. Sending you all a big hug and lots of love from the West Coast of the United States. Good Shabbos!